Imagine standing at the edge of the highest place on earth. The air is so thin, your brain is slowly shutting down, your fingers frozen solid, your vision blurring. The summit is right there, close enough to touch, but nobody knows if you ever made it. And the worst part, nobody ever will. This is not a fictional story. This is the true story of George Herbert Leigh Mallory, the man who may have reached the top of Mount Everest 29 years before Edmund Hillary and vanished into the mountain forever. And the clues he left behind are absolutely chilling. Walk with me as I take you on another journey through the eyes of history. Today, thousands of people have climbed Everest, but in the early 1920s, Everest was different. It wasn't a tourist destination. It wasn't a challenge. It was a giant white unknown, a place that seemed almost supernatural. At 29,032 feet, or 8,848 meters, it rises above the world like a frozen kingdom. The air near the summit contains only a fraction of the oxygen available at sea level. People become confused. Their judgment fails, their bodies begin to shut down. Even today, climbers die there. But in Mallory's era, Everest was practically another planet. No human had ever reached the summit. Many experts weren't even sure it was possible. Some believed the human body simply couldn't survive at such heights. Therefore, every expedition was less a climb and more an experiment with death. George Mallory was born in England in 1886. He wasn't a reckless thrill seeker. He was educated, intelligent, charming, a teacher by profession. But mountains had a strange effect on him. The moment he encountered climbing, it became an obsession. Friends and family noticed it. The mountains seemed to pull him toward them like gravity. When Britain became determined to conquer Everest, Mallory quickly emerged as one of his greatest climbers. He joined the first British Everest expedition in 1921. The mission wasn't even to reach the summit. Nobody knew the route. They were exploring, mapping, trying to understand the mountain. Mallory spent months studying Everest's terrifying slopes. Most people would have looked at that mountain and seen a warning. Mallory saw an invitation. Therefore, he returned again in 1922. This time, the team aimed for the summit. They climbed higher than any human being in history. But Everest struck back. An avalanche thundered down the mountain. Several porters were killed. The expedition ended in tragedy. For many people, that would have been enough. For Mallory, it only deepened the obsession. In 1924, Britain launched another attempt. This would be Mallory's third journey to Everest. He was now 37 years old. He knew opportunities like this were limited. His wife, Ruth, remained at home in England. Before leaving, he reportedly carried a photograph of her. He intended to place it on the summit if he succeeded. That detail would later become crucial because decades later, investigators would search desperately for that photograph. But let us not get ahead of ourselves. The expedition arrived in Tibet. Months of preparation followed. Loads were carried up the mountain. Camps were established. The climbers slowly pushed higher. Every step became harder. Every breath became a battle. But Mallory seemed determined to finish what he had started years earlier. He wasn't just climbing Everest anymore. He was chasing history itself. For his final summit attempt, Mallory chose an unusual partner, a 22-year-old climber named Andrew Irvine. Irvine lacked Mallory's experience. Many questioned the decision, but Irvine possessed something incredibly valuable. He was gifted with machinery, especially oxygen equipment. The primitive oxygen systems of the 1920s were unreliable. They frequently malfunctioned. Irvine understood how to fix them. Therefore, Mallory believed the young climber might be the key to reaching the top. Together, the pair prepared for the greatest gamble of their lives. June 8, 1924. The day began cold, brutally cold. The two climbers left their high camp. Above them stood the summit. Below them stretched miles of empty space. Every movement required enormous effort. The higher they climbed, the thinner the air became. The mountain transformed into a world of exhaustion and hallucination. Far below, another climber named Noel Odell watched through breaks in the cloud. At approximately 12:50 p.m., Odell witnessed something extraordinary. For a brief moment, the clouds parted. He later reported seeing Mallory and Irvine high on the mountain, very high. They were climbing strongly, moving upward, approaching one of the mountain's difficult to rock obstacles. But before Odell could observe longer, the clouds closed again. The mountain swallowed them. That was the last confirmed sighting of George Mallory alive, the last glimpse, the last certainty. After that moment, only questions remained. Hours passed. The summit team never returned. Night arrived. No sign of them. The next day brought more waiting. Still nothing. Soon, the terrible truth became unavoidable. Mallory and Irvine were gone. lost somewhere on Everest. Search efforts found no trace, no bodies, no equipment, nothing. It was as if the mountain had erased them. Therefore, the expedition eventually abandoned hope. The surviving climbers descended. Everest remained unconquered. The mystery remained unsolved. But one question immediately began haunting everyone involved. How high had they actually reached? In 1953, nearly 30 years later, history was made. Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay reached the summit of Everest. Their success changed the world. The mountain had finally been conquered, but their triumph created a new mystery. What if Mallory had already done it? What if he reached the summit in 1924? If that happened, history's most famous mountaineering achievement belongs to a man who never returned. The debate exploded. Experts studied maps, weather reports, climbing speeds. Some believed Mallory couldn't possibly have made it. Others insisted he had a realistic chance. Nobody knew because the mountain still held the evidence. For decades, Everest remained silent. But in 1999, 75 years after the disappearance, a search expedition went looking specifically for Mallory. What they found shocked the world. High on the mountain's northern face, they discovered a body, frozen, preserved by the cold, weathered by decades of wind. It was George Mallory. The mountain had finally returned one of its secrets. His body revealed horrifying clues: a broken leg, serious injuries, evidence suggesting a violent fall. The rope marks around his waist indicated he had been roped to Irvine when disaster struck. At some point, something had gone terribly wrong, but the discovery created even more mysteries because several important items were missing. The photograph of his wife was not found. The photo he planned to leave on the summit had vanished. Was it lost during the fall, or had he placed it at the top of the mountain? Nobody could say. Even more importantly, the camera Mallory and Irvine carried was missing. That camera might have contained the answer. If recovered, perhaps the final photographs would reveal whether they reached the summit, but the camera was nowhere to be found. The search for Irvine became almost as important as the search for Mallory. Experts believed Irvine might still possess the camera. If his body could be located, the mystery might finally end. Over the years, climbers reported possible sightings, rumors spread, fragments of evidence emerged, but certainty remained elusive. The mountain continued guarding its secrets. One possibility fascinates historians. Imagine Mallory and Irvine reaching the summit. Imagine them standing on the top of the world, nearly 30 years before anyone else. They celebrate. They begin descending, but darkness approaches. Exhaustion overwhelms them. A mistake occurs, a slip, a fall. History is made, but nobody survives to tell the story. It's possible, entirely possible, but there is another possibility. Perhaps they never reached the summit. Perhaps they came agonizingly close. Perhaps the mountain defeated them only a few hundred feet below immortality. The evidence supports both theories. Therefore, the debate continues. Today, George Mallory remains one of the most famous figures in mountaineering history. Not because we know what happened, but because we don't. Most historical mysteries fade. This one refuses. Because Everest still stands. Because those clouds still drift across the summits. Because somewhere on that mountain may still lie the final clue. Maybe the camera, maybe Irvine, maybe evidence waiting to be discovered. The answer could be hidden beneath ice that hasn't moved in decades. Or perhaps the truth disappeared forever with the men who carried it. Perhaps one day the mountain would finally surrender the truth. But until that day, George Mallory remains frozen between legend and history. A man who climbed into the clouds and never came back. Thank you guys for watching. Do well to like, comment, share, subscribe, and walk with me again through the eyes of history.